All right, let's get right into it. We are unpacking the big one today, the July 2025 Consumer Price Index report. It's amazing how a single number can cause such a stir, sending waves from Wall Street through Washington, D.C., and right into your own wallet.
So here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll talk about what the CPI actually is. Think of it as our economic barometer for inflation. Then, we'll dive straight into the brand new July numbers. After that, we'll connect the dots to what it means for your personal finances. And finally, we'll look at the bigger picture, the tug of war between the Fed and the rest of the world.
So, really, what is all the fuss about? Why does this one number, which drops at 8:30 in the morning on August 12th, have literally everyone, from top-tier economists to everyday families, holding their breath? Well, let's get into it. Okay, first things first. Before we can really make sense of the July numbers, we've got to understand the tool we use to measure them, the CPI itself. The Consumer Price Index, or CPI, has been the main way we've tracked inflation since way back in 1919. Basically, it measures the average price change for a whole basket of things we all buy, from gas for the car to groceries for the week. It's a huge deal because it reflects the spending of over 90% of the entire U.S. population.
And man, has tracking this number been a roller coaster. Just look at the history. You had the brutal stagflation of the 70s, then this long, kind of quiet decade of super low inflation in the 2010s. And then, bam, June 2022 hits and inflation skyrockets to 9.1%, a high we hadn't seen in decades. Now, by May of this year, it had cooled off quite a bit. But this wild history is exactly why everyone's watching so closely now.
All right, now for the main event. Let's dig into the brand new July 2025 numbers and see what the data is actually telling us. So let's set our baseline. Coming out of June, year-over-year inflation was sitting at 2.7%. That felt pretty stable, right? A lot of people thought, okay, maybe the worst of the price hikes are finally over. But the forecast for July is pointing to a little bump. Just a little one, up to 2.8%. Now, that might not sound like much, but even a tiny increase like this can signal a change in direction, and that's what has the markets feeling a bit on edge. And you can see that little uptick right here. It's a small but really significant shift. After that nice period of cooling off, it looks like inflation is starting to creep back up. So the big question is, why?
Well, the data is pointing pretty clearly to one main driver: newly expanded tariffs. These are basically taxes on stuff we import from places like Mexico, Canada, and the European Union. And they're starting to make things like household furniture, clothes, toys, and even flooring more expensive for all of us.
So that brings us to the most important part, right? How does all this economic policy stuff actually hit your wallet? Let's connect the policy to your purse.
Now, this is why it matters so much. Consumer spending, that's you and me, just buying things, is the absolute engine of the U.S. economy. It drives almost 70% of everything. So, when prices start to go up, it puts a direct strain on that engine.
And believe me, this isn't some abstract theory. We can already see it happening in the June numbers. The price of toys jumped almost 2% in just 1 month. And get this, window and floor coverings shot up by a whopping 4.2%. With the overall tariff rate on imported goods climbing toward 9%, this trend is likely to continue, maybe even speed up.
And you don't have to take my word for it. Economist Heather Long really put her finger on it. She said that these rising prices, especially for the goods getting hit by tariffs, could really start to squeeze middle-class family budgets.
All right, let's zoom out, because this isn't just about our wallets. This report is creating a ton of pressure and sending ripples across the globe, especially for the Federal Reserve. And this is where it gets really interesting, because we're looking at a tale of two completely different policies. On one side, you have the Federal Reserve. They're looking at this inflation, they're worried it's being driven by tariffs, and they're getting cautious. They'll probably hold off on cutting interest rates to keep things stable. But on the other side, you've got the White House pushing for a big 3-point rate cut to try and juice the economy. Two powerful institutions, two totally different game plans.
So that leaves us with the million-dollar question, doesn't it? As prices get pushed higher and the country's top economic policymakers head in opposite directions, how does the economy find its balance? The answer is anything but clear,
and how we navigate this tension is going to shape our financial world for a long time to come. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.